Thank you very much. And thank you, Julie, and all the hard work that your organization has put together to allow this to happen. As she said, it's not only a very interesting place, but it's a very beautiful place. And so we're delighted to be a part of its history and be a part of this day. PNC's been here 8 years, and it was 7 years ago that we started events here to celebrate Black history, and we've had a range of physical locations and subject matter. But we thought today it would be a little bit different. We'd talk about just D.C. Black history and what that's meant to this community that had an extraordinarily vibrant African-American community long before many other communities had that in terms of cultural activity and civic participation. So it's a really interesting sort of dichotomy. It seemed also appropriate to us that in the tenor of the hour, where we had 2 movies that were involved in Oscar nominations that all had to do very disparate ways with the whole history of African Americans, one that celebrated the Emancipation Proclamation and one controversial one that talked about the whole history of slavery, the good and the bad, mostly the bad. And they were very, very topical over the past 30 to 60 days leading up to Sunday night. So it's we continue, in my judgment, we continue to wrestle in this country with how to put all this in perspective. Where do we put African American history? How do we put it in a very, very widely ranged different history in different parts of the country? We're having a hard time getting our arms around how to deal with all of this. And so this is all a continuation of that work in process. So that's what we're about today. And we think we've put together a pretty interesting panel to discuss this. One panelist warned us when we asked her that there was a 50-50 chance she might be able to be here, and sure enough, Eleanor Holmes Norton is not here. I have a quiet prayer that she's helping fix some things. It will take more than Eleanor to get that fixed, but maybe enlightenment will reign in the next 72 hours, so we'll see what happens. But we do have some very experienced people to talk about the African American experience in the district. And it's particularly appropriate, as you heard Julie say, that we're doing that in this building. So let me introduce, on my right is Frank. We have 3 PhDs here today. We have people, really esteemed people. None of them are bankers. I shouldn't say that about you.
That's why we're PhDs.
We have Frank Smith over here, who was the founder of the African American Civil War Museum, where we had this event last year, a PhD. We have Bernard Dumchak from George Washington University, who is one of the most noted scholars on African American history, conducts a lot of tours on African American history in the district, lectures on it, everywhere from Foggy Bottom to Ben's Chili Bowl. So really quite an expert. And our own Mary Beth Corrigan, who will tell you immediately she is not a banker, even though she works for us. We found Mary Beth when we acquired the Riggs Bank. She was the archivist and the historian of that bank. She is a board member of the DC Historical Society, and we have enlisted her over the last 8 years as we have acquired banks all across the eastern part of the United States. She goes in and makes sure that we archive and retrieve the history that's important to that community and part of that. And she also has a doctorate in history with a specialty on African American history right around the Civil War in the district. And so Denise Barnes, who has served as our moderator before, will serve as the moderator again this morning. And so we'll have an opportunity to hear from these people and then to hear from your questions and answers. So thank you very much for being here.